Hello, everybody. We hope that you're having a great day. It's been a wonderful day of sessions so far. I'm really excited to be here to introduce to you the amazing National Blogging Collaborative folks. They are doing transformative work in our field. They are committed to empowering teachers to share their voice and their stories. And they are here to serve you and provide you all the coaching that you need so that you can write and produce your own blogs and share your stories from your classrooms about your students and all the work that you're doing. I have had the pleasure of working with them. Chris Bronke, who is on over there, he was my coach as I wrote my most recent blog post for the Ed Collab. So I can speak from experience that they really are so helpful and supportive, and if you are a little tentative to dip your toe into writing and publishing, they are the folks to help make you confident and feel ready to go. So I am going to turn it over to them, and they are going to introduce themselves and encourage you to write.
Great, thank you so much for the warm introduction, Heather. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen share here, and then we'll be ready to go. Good morning, everyone. I guess actually it's probably afternoon at this point in time, if I'm not mistaken. But we're so glad that you're joining us, and so honored to be here to talk about really not just blogging, but using blogging as a means to amplify and empower the teacher voice. At any point in time, that's you can have questions, use the hashtag, make this as collaborative as possible. What we wanted to do is actually start with this concept, and this is really at its core how the National Blogging Collaborative was formed, is this idea that, I don't know about you guys, I'm kind of a teacher nerd, I guess, so I don't know, about once a week I like to do this, and I encourage you, if you're sitting on your couch right now, sitting in a chair, wherever you're at watching, go ahead and try this, right? Just go ahead and Google teacher. And then switch over to news. Make it a news Google search. And my guess is you're going to find something along these lines. And if you take a look and see those, it's not really what teaching is. Teaching is a lot more than lawsuits and teacher strikes and union fights and all of those sorts of things. And we all got together at a convening in New Orleans one year, and we said, we've got to do something about this. Like, we have to take action to stop this. It's horrible for our profession. And so we created the National Blogging Collaborative to, what we say, kind of help teachers reclaim the national narrative. That's really our goal. That's really what we're trying to do. And so what we decided we would do today for this session is create a session kind of framed around the top 5 lessons that we have learned as blogging coaches that might help you amplify your teaching voice through blogging. So you're going to see we're going to structure this as a roundtable discussion. I think one of the keys to the discussion is going to be that we need you. We have some lessons we've learned as we've worked with bloggers across the country and across grade levels, from kindergarten, through high school. But ultimately, there's probably some questions you may have about any facet of blogging and getting started, or the actual writing process and all of those things. And so feel free to use them. It's nice that we've got 5 or 4 people on the chat today, plus tech support from the Ed Collab gathering. So we should be able to monitor that Twitter feed pretty well and respond to your questions as we go. So please feel free to do that. I think one of the things that we want to do just before we jump into, though, is to just do a quick little introduction of kind of who we are. So I'm going to start by asking Lisa to quickly introduce herself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Lisa Hollenbach. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I am a teacher, social studies teacher at Palmyra High School, and also a department chair. I'm a co-founder of the National Blog Collaborative and a blogging coach, and I'm so happy to be here today.
All right, thanks, Lisa. And we're going to keep our fingers crossed that the technical difficulty has ironed itself out, and we're going to ask Kristen to introduce herself.
Can you hear me?
Mike's not picking up right now, Chris.
Okay.
Let her work on that. Brooke, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brooke Perry. I teach 6th grade in Kent, Washington. I'm a blogger myself for the Puget Sound Educational Service District, and blogging is newish to me. I've been doing it for about a year, and I found a new passion with it, being a blogging coach.
Great, thanks, Brooke. As I said earlier, my name is Chris Bronke. I am a high school English department chair in the Chicagoland suburb of Downers Grove, and I'm one of the co-founders as well, and work as Heather already mentioned, as one of the blogging coaches, and really just love this work that we're doing, and hope that we can help you guys throughout. So our hashtag on Twitter is @NatBlogCollab, so feel free to follow us along there. We also have a website that is www.nationalbloggingcollaborative.com, so we can try that as well. We're going to go back one more time and see if Kristen is now live, and if not, I can do the introduction.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Still not there with us. I'm not sure. It's the irony is thick as could be in that I will introduce Kristen. One of her roles is an instructional technology coach. So the irony of the situation is not lost on any of us. Kristen is a student support services interventionist as well at Hinsdale Central High School, and also I know all of these things so well because she is my lovely and beautiful wife. So Kristen, hopefully we'll get your mic up and going here, and we can have you join us in this call here at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our first learn. We'll kind of have a conversation about that. One of the things that we've learned in working with writers, again, from across the country, is that teachers believe that they don't have anything to say. One of the things we hear a lot is like, I kind of want to blog, but I don't really have anything to say, or even more so, like, no one really wants to hear about my work. I mean, what I'm doing is really not all that cool. Like, everyone's doing that. And you know, we think that there's some flaws in that logic, and so we wanted to kind of explore those with you for a little bit, and have a chance to talk through, you know, what we've learned when we hear that from teachers that we work with. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and open the floor to a little bit of conversation here. I'm going to ask Lisa, maybe actually of all of us, we could probably take our mics off mute now at this point in time just to chat a little bit. And let's go ahead and take a talk about this. So Lisa, when a writer comes to you, or maybe it's someone in your hallway, someone at your school, you talk about blogging and they say, but you know, Lisa, I don't have anything to say. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would start by saying I think that they couldn't be more wrong about that. There are a myriad of stories happening in classrooms all over every single day. Lessons playing out, methods being used. And I don't know about you, but I'd like to hear about that great teacher does have something to say, and it would be my job when somebody asks me that question to help them see that.
That's great. Brooke, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with that, Lisa. And a lot of times, and this was me when I first started blogging too, I wasn't sure what I had to say really mattered to anybody. But it wasn't until I took that risk and put it out there for others to read, and I got feedback from others, and I got pushback from others, and I got insight from others, that's when I really felt like what I was saying was relevant, and people did want to hear it. So sometimes it's just about taking that leap into it and taking that risk.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Brooke. And I guess, you know, I want to push back on your pushback a little bit. You know, you said that getting pushback helped you realize that maybe you did have something to say. Talk a little bit more about that. Like, how does that work for you?
You know, when you asked that, Chris, right away my thoughts went to my students. And it's funny how everything I do in my professional life, outside of the work I do with my students, it always really does boil down to them. So when I'm working with my students and I'm teaching them how to think critically, I push back on them all the time. I ask them questions all the time. And it's really, and you know, we've had this discussion, we've talked about this, blogging is a personal thing and it is a reflective thing. And that pushback is what helps me reflect. And reflection causes me to be a better teacher.
Yeah, I think that's great. Lisa, kind of taking that and going into you, like, in what role do your students play in you being a blogger?
Oh gosh, most of the things that that I think about, that I write about, actually start in my classroom, and in the same way, where I'm pushing them and I'm learning lessons and I'm learning about how my methods or my strategies are working with them. I listen to them when they talk to me, and they talk to me about the problems that they're having as students, and it really makes me think. Sometimes I fill their buckets, and sometimes they fill mine, and as a result of my experience blogging, they're blogging too. So they are learning about the power of blogging and reading each other's blogs and responding to one another when they play around with the content and try to find a way to make that meaningful to them. So not only am I taking that and using it to grow as a professional, I'm showing it to them so they can take it and use it to grow as students, as learners, as thinkers.
Yeah, I think that's great. And one of the things we like to do at the National Blogging Collaborative is have fun. And so you'll probably hear us kind of being goofy along the way. And so Lisa's going to get the first extra bonus points as blogging coach to use the word buckets. That's one of the buzzwords of the National Blogging Collaborative. We thoroughly enjoy putting things into buckets, so we hope that you will consider putting the buckets in your life as well. I think one of the things that is a challenge, though, is I think most teachers would agree with everything that you just said about how you can have your students impact, or your pushback can impact your students. How do we get other teachers to see the value of other educators putting pushback on us as sort of, if nothing else, maybe the key element of why teacher blogging is so important?
I would say to that it's important because it really stretches our thinking. It's not enough to just sit with your own thoughts. Sometimes we have the biggest aha moments when somebody else is present and is having a conversation with us. So I think in order for me to grow, I need feedback from talk with me about my ideas, and I need to talk with them about theirs. And just have the opportunity to think differently about things once in a while.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm going to put a quick pause in for a second, and we're gonna double check that. I think Kristen's now live and audible for us. Chris, you want to say hi to everyone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. Thank God for an iPad. Hi, I'm Kristen. Chris introduced me earlier, and I will now jump into the conversation once I pick back on what you guys are talking about.
Chris, do you also want to, I did not introduce you in terms of the role you play at the National Blogging Collaborative, so you just want to give a little 30-second little whip of what you do for us?
Absolutely. So I'm co-founder of the National Blogging Collaborative and project manager. So when you submit a request to have a coach, I'm that person that is delegating out all of your information to our awesome coaches, and then also supporting you along the way if there are questions.
Great, thank you. Since we're at a small little pause here, it seems like a good time just to remind everyone, I see some tweets are flying and we love it, but feel free to throw challenges or, quite frankly, pushbacks towards us. We would love to have a little dissonance thrown into this conversation. I think it's how we learn and how we grow, or if you have questions, any of those would be fantastic. So we were in the midst, and I think maybe we'll get Brooke to chime in for a little bit here on this. How do you get teachers to understand that they can translate this idea of giving pushback to their students into their own lives of interacting with other teachers?
I kind of share just my personal experiences. It's really been the last year that I've really tried to reach out of just my immediate teacher groups, and I've developed this nationwide professional learning community, and blogging has been that vehicle. So being able to put my voice out there on a national stage and getting insight from people all over the country and teachers all over the country, it's really helped me grow as an educator. And so when I share these things with my colleagues, and I help them get on Twitter, and I get that blogging idea into their head, just those natural conversations I have with them is how I try to get them to drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, the non-cult-based Kool-Aid, of course. Yeah. I mean, but I think it's a good point, and I want to bring up a tweet just quickly here that I just saw. Sarah Parker thanking Kristen for giving Julie Hiltz as her blogging coach. I think this is one of the cool things about what we're doing. Or what we're trying to do as teachers, for teachers, by teachers. We've gotten to a point where I didn't even realize that Sarah Parker was working with the National Blogging Collaborative. And so I saw that came across. I'm like, wow, that's so awesome. Because we've expanded our coaching staff to about, I think we're at 7, 8, 9 coaches, something like that. And it's so exciting. So Sarah, thanks for the support and thanks for working with us. Well, in order to keep us on track, I'm going to go ahead and switch to our next question here. So coaches, if you just want to throw it on mute for a second. The other things, and I think it kind of ties into the last point about, like, I'm not sure what I would say and people don't want to hear it, but then even if you believe, right, I have something to say, that next step is, but holy crap, I'm not a writer. Right, and I think one of the things, and one of the reasons we helped try to found this organization was we realized that the national narrative, while void of bloggers as a whole in terms of how many we need to really reclaim those that were out there tended to be more of the English teachers, which makes sense, right? I mean, they have writing training, but we know that there are so many other voices that need to be part of this tapestry of teacher thought and belief and practice that we said, like, we need to help that. And so I think let's take a little time talking about how we deal with people who are ready to make that next step, but just afraid that, like, I'm not a writer. In fact, like, maybe I went into math education for that exact reason, right? How do we deal with that? And Chris, we haven't heard from you, and Kristen is the pseudo non but soon to be writer of the group, so I think it's a perfect place to start with her. So Chris, what do you think?
I think the key is to find somebody that you trust to review your thoughts and also to give you feedback. And it's also about being prepared with regards to the concept that you want to write about and what you want to say. I am the non-writer of the bunch, and part of that, is because I'm the business teacher and married to an English teacher, and so it is a little different. But I think when you read what everyone else has posted, it really motivates you to get going and to come up with that piece that you want to share with everybody.
I think that's such an awesome point there, Chris. And it's what we do with our kids, right? We use mentor text, right? We read to be inspired to write, and at times we write in response to something we've read. So I think one of the things that we as a coaching staff have learned is that when we're working with bloggers who maybe are afraid to take that step and they're not sure if they're a writer, sometimes we just tell them, like, hey, go read some more, like, go read this person's blog or go read that person's blog. I think that's really huge. Brooke, how do you navigate that? How do you work with people who, they have it to say, they know they have good things to say, and then it's like, nope, not going to do it?
I, again, would always just boil it down to the work that I do with my students. I'm always asking my students to think critically, be reflective, and we truly are, no matter what you teach, we're all reading teachers, and I'd be willing to argue that we're all writing teachers too, because no matter if it's middle school algebra or high school business or what have you, we need to teach our students to be able to communicate effectively. So I always use the argument, if we're going to ask our students to do this, we should set that example ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's that simple. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and anyone who has an argument with that has, I think, bigger things that they need to go argue. And maybe that's a little self-righteous on my part, but I would fight that one. Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and just bring a follow-up point in before we just have you go straight to the same things. I think we're kind of, have a lot of the same thoughts going on right now. One of the things that Kristen mentioned was trust. So Lisa, I want to go ahead and turn that over to you. How do you go about building trust with people with which you do writing work, or how do you try to use trust as a way to get people to say, like, I am a writer? Like, our philosophy is, I write, therefore I'm a writer. I mean, that's the principal guiding philosophy of the NBC. So how do you use trust to do that? Oh, I think we lost Lisa there. Lisa?
I think. Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think you're frozen on us.
All right. Well, you can hear me. We'll go ahead and go. I think that where trust is concerned, it really stems from building relationships. So when working with somebody with writing, that's the first step, is having a conversation and really learning a little bit about the person that we're working with. And also, once we get into the writing process, being honest, and also, in addition to the honesty, giving suggestions, but always offering it up to the writer to make decisions about their own work, and letting the writer lead. That's what they need to do. And when you present them with your ideas about what they're doing, and maybe why they should or shouldn't think about changing something or doing something in a different way or using a different structure, they appreciate that feedback, and they appreciate your honesty with them. And they also come to believe you when you tell them that what they're writing is really good and they have great points, and encourage them to keep going. So I'll go back to it's about relationships that allow them to be vulnerable, and maybe sharing some of yourself and being vulnerable back with the people that you're working with. And when they come to trust you and believe you when you say that what they're doing is powerful, some really powerful writing gets put out into the community.
Yeah, I think what you said there too with that idea about being honest, right? I mean, we do it to our students all the time. I think, part of the argument just keeps going back to students, right? Like, how many of our students, if we gave them the option, when we assigned a writing assignment, would say, but I'm not a writer, right? And that's the end of the conversation, or say, okay, well, cool. I mean, all right, Johnny, you're fine, right? I mean, we wouldn't do that, right? And just like if a student, put out a piece of writing out there that wasn't very good, we wouldn't say, hey, great job, right? We'd be honest with them. I think it was Julie Heltz, one of our blogging coaches, in a different round table we did not too long ago. She made a great point. She said, if you write something and it's bad, sometimes it was meant to be bad. Right, like that's part of the joy of writing. Like not everything that's written is meant to be good, and I thought that's something that stuck with me. I consider myself a writer. I've been writing for a while. And I was like, boy, yeah, that explains a lot of the stuff I've written. It was just meant to be bad. Now I get it, and so she really helped me with that. Chris, I want to turn to you for a second and talk a little bit about that honesty piece and what role that plays in. Because you're the one who brought it up, right? That surround yourself with people who will be honest with you. And I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit as kind of the non-writer too. Like how does that play a role in perhaps maybe soon getting you to think about writing, or why is that still something you haven't done?
I think the key to the honesty piece is that you want someone who's going to highlight for you the really great pieces of what you're writing, but then also give you feedback on the places that you can improve or the areas where people might get confused about what you're saying. And I think the honesty and trust that you build with that person then allows you to be much more comfortable posting stuff publicly, sharing your thoughts. If you have a blogging coach or you ask someone just to read an essay that you've written or a letter of introduction for a new job, you've made yourself a little bit more vulnerable because someone else is reading what you wrote, but then you're also getting that feedback. Someone's saying to you, reaffirming what you're thinking or giving you feedback that helps you even become better at what you're doing. So I think when we're talking about, writing, we're not even just talking about blogging, we're talking about just in general letter of intro or an assignment that you've put out there for parents to look at or, anything like that. It's a key to have some honest feedback.
Great, thanks, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and move us to our next question here. And before I do, I just want to remind everyone to please feel free to tweet in some questions if you have them. At this point in time, as blogging coaches with the NBC, we've worked with over, I think, 35 writers from around the country. That number continues to grow daily, and hopefully some of you will consider joining us in this journey at some point after this event. But please feel free to ask questions, and we'd love to share what we've learned. We're going to go to this question here, and I know this has come up in the other session. I was just watching the leadership panel talk about, it's just I don't have time, or if I do have time, I have to spend it doing something else. And I guess, just spend a little bit of time here talking about how we navigate that idea of which time we do or don't have in our lives. And I'm going to start with you, Brooke. How do you either personally navigate that conundrum or help your writers at the NBC that you work with help navigate that?
Chris, I'm going to be honest and tell you that time management is not my specialty. And it is a real issue, especially with people in our career. It's a real issue. So anyone out there who's listening, please tweet something on Twitter and let me know how you organize your time, because I need more guidance. But I will say what I have realized, especially with taking on having blogging take a bigger role in my life, I've really noticed that in our lives we prioritize and we make time for things that are important to us and things that we find value in. And once I really found some true value from this process of blogging, I found myself making more and more time. And then this is one of my New Year's resolutions actually. I've started really just calendaring out my week, and I make sure that, Tuesday evening from 9 o'clock on, I'm going to blog. Or Thursday afternoon from 4 to 5, I'm going to work with this blogger that I work with. So just being really intentional about how you spend your time too is something that's helped me.
Yeah, that's great. Caroline, can I ask you to bring up that tweet that we just had from Sarah? Really, I think makes a great point here. She says, "Take time to write, just like you take time to read." And I think to me, it's just that simple. It's so many of us in education are adamant that we make time to read. And I think that's great. I don't think anyone's saying stop reading so that you can write more. But I think it is that. And if we want to reclaim the national narrative in education, we have to commit ourselves to writing and sharing that writing on a consistent basis. So Sarah, thank you for that tweet. I really appreciate it. Lisa, what about you? How do you navigate the time conundrum that is education?
I look at time management kind of as a mythical creature. I agree with Brooke in that it's not my specialty, but many times it's just triage. What comes next? What's most important? And I would echo Brooke's sentiments on prioritizing and finding the value in the writing. What we're doing in the classroom and all of those things that are so pressing on our time, are truly important, but at the same time, it's also important for us to grow as educators, and blogging has been a really important way for me to grow. So I think, like Brooke, scheduling time to work with bloggers or scheduling time to work on my own writing and reading is really important. And, I know one of my practices, I've made it a practice to every Monday write down which bloggers I need to contact, how and why, and make sure I do that before the end of the day and start those conversations with them early in the week so that we can have a nice working plan to get through the rest of the week.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, one of the things, if you're considering trying to get started with blogging, you're thinking about using the National Blogging Collaborative, I think one of the benefits of working with a coach is you do have sort of that person who's kind of staying on top of it for a little bit for you. And certainly we're not there to impose a timeline on you or force you to write at any moment. But, it's kind of nice to have that weekly reminder like, hey, how's your writing going? And, sometimes we hear back, it's not because I'm really busy. And we say, cool, check in a week, right? And at times we hear, oh, my God, I have so much to share. And then, we rearrange our schedules to make sure that we can hear everything you have. I want to link another tweet really quickly here. Brenda Kroop says, blogging is my way to reflect on my practice. And I think, to me, that's one of the reasons why we should be making the time to do it as well, whether it's formally because of the Danielson stuff and all that, or just because we want to get better, right? One of the workshops that transformed my approach to education and my own passion for writing was, listening to Penny Kittle talk, where she firmly believes there are things within us we don't know that we don't even know until we write about them and they come out through our written words. And I think that that's true about our practice. Like, we didn't know that this part of our classroom was bothering us or that part. And so I think for me, the time piece, and this is the advice I give to people I work with, like writers and teachers, if you look at blogging as simply a product, you'll never find the time for it, because we don't have time in our lives for more product-based entities. But if you look at blogging as a process to improving yourself and the teacher education field, I find it hard to believe that we all don't have time, right? We don't have time not to be doing it, sort of thing. So before I switch over to, Brooke, go ahead, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you too, because Brenda sent in another question, another tweet, and I think you'd be a great person to answer this, because you get, you do. You put a lot of blogs up there and you get a lot of responses, and she was just asking, how do we get readers to of our blog? How do we get people to read our blog but then also respond to us and interact with us?
Yeah, two great questions. I have learned the best way, this is going to sound really silly, the best way to get readers to read your blog is to put out things that matter. I track the analytics on my blogs fairly regularly, and I use those to help me determine what topics I should be writing about or maybe I shouldn't be writing about, assuming that all of my blogs go out to generally the same audience via Twitter. If people are reading certain ones over others, it has me thinking about, well, what topics do I want to be writing about? Not that I would only write something because I hope people will read it, but that is something that I like to look at. I think, too, quite frankly, like the title of something matters. The blog that I've written that has the most views was called Because Mirrors Have Bias. right? And I think people were drawn to that, right, because there was this idea of self. And so, Brenda, I would encourage you to think about, what is the topic you're writing about, but then also what are you titling the pieces, and then your Twitter campaign. Are you, how often are you tweeting it, when are you tweeting it? There's all sorts of metrics, and at the National Blogging Collaborative, we can help you with some of those about when you should be tweeting those to get, peak viewership and those sorts of things. With regards to having people interact with them, I struggled with that as well when I was using Blogger as a platform. When I switched to Medium as my platform, that became a lot more authentic and a lot more able to happen. So that would be my thought on those. But coaches, other things you've learned along the way?
Chris, I would say in some cases ask for comments if you have a question, and end with a question, and you send it out to your community and say, hey, I want to hear your voice on this. You're likely to get more readers to give you the feedback you need. So don't be afraid to ask someone to comment on what you've done and give their opinion too. Will it always be a positive one? Absolutely not, but we need to hear the negative just as well.
Yeah, and actually that's a fantastic transition into our next lesson that we've learned or thing we want to share with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to that. And we hear this from teachers a lot, whether they're writers that we actually are working with at the NBC, teachers in our district, or anything else, is people might disagree with me, or even yet, like, I might anger my district, and that's the last thing I want to do. I'm going to, carve out this time that I don't have to spend time writing, to publish, to then have, the principal calm me down and say, yeah, we really need you to stop doing that. That doesn't sound fun for anyone involved, and so I think we've learned a few things along the way as blogging coaches that maybe we can help with if that's a thought you're having. So I'm going to start with Kristen here. She is someone who works in a district that's fairly political. I think they all are, but hers has had some issues with that over the years, and how politics play a part. So Kristen, your district who's considering blogging, and in fact you do have someone from your district at the National Blogging Collaborative writing. So what would you say?
I would say, you want to pick topics. I think as Chris was talking about a little bit earlier, you want to pick topics that are important to others and they want to read it, but also that are important to you. Because chances are the topics that are important to you are things that you are discussing in your district right now. They're things that are hot topics even maybe locally or within the state or region. And so I think that the topic choice is important. There are people that are going to be worried about what's the district administrator going to say. I've read some blogs in the last few months written by people, and the comments that the things that they have said within their posts have been surprising, and perhaps not necessarily things that I would have put out there. And so I think, again, that goes back to having someone reread it, having someone give you feedback on it. I think that if your colleagues are reading it and they're comfortable with what you're saying, then I think a district administrator, in fact, based on our district, I think a district administrator is going to be comfortable with it. But you want to pick topics that are great choices in education, but are not necessarily personal vendettas against a specific thing. And I've seen some blog posts in the last 6 months that maybe have been a little bit more personal attacky, and you want to avoid that. I think you want to really just be a little bit more choosy on the topic that you pick, and make sure someone else reads it before posting it.
Before I have another coach jump in on that, I just want to follow up Christina McCabe, fantastic teacher from New Jersey, had asked about Medium and sort of why I like it best. To me, we're a Google Apps for Education school, and Medium, I think, best mirrors the comment feature of Google Docs. And so as students are reading one another's work, they can highlight a specific line or lines and insert a comment over the right, and it looks just like it would on Google Docs, and they can reply to those comments as well. So really, to me, like, my biggest passion in education is making learning social, and Blogger didn't allow that to happen, but Medium really does. So hopefully that helps you, Christina, and feel free to reach out if you have more questions. So sticking with that, people are going to be scared what they have to say. Lisa, you also work in a district where politics play a difficult role. And you do have teachers in your building thinking about blogging. So how do you navigate that with them?
I think that, everything Kristen said was right spot on. I think we have to be very careful about the topics we pick and making sure they're not the personal vendettas. As a coach, I look in some of the writing of a few bloggers I've been working with and found some of those areas where I thought we should pause and think about whether that was the message that they wanted to put out. And sometimes just taking the time to think about it and restructuring helps that message get across in a way that is more productive. So I think my second point would be to write with a solutions focus. Writing is not about just throwing out the negative, but it's also coming to the table with a solution or coming to the table with questions to start a conversation. And in my experience as a blogger and a user of Twitter, I've had these things happen where people have come to me and said, "I've seen the tweet." And I'm never sure what that is. I told them there's thousands of them. You'll have to be more specific. But there are some things that people get upset about that I post, and I think that I have enough of a network that I run my things past that I feel okay putting out what I do put out. As a union leader, I also feel that our unions are maybe a little over concerned about social media and blogging, and a little bit because they want to protect us, but they're getting in the way of teachers progressing into leaders through writing because they're actually telling us to be very cautious and maybe sometimes not put our stories out there. So with sometimes the advice of our leaders telling us, you know what, you don't want to do that because you'll get in trouble, that's getting in the way of encouraging teachers to do this and take a chance. But I feel if they do it in the right way, for the right reasons, with the right focus, their ideas will help the conversation on education instead of hinder it.
Yeah, I just want to draw attention to a tweet that just came through here from Carrie Matsu, I believe, if I'm saying that right, and I just want to give props out to her and her district, at Jeff Rose Soup. Whoever you are, I would love to go work for you. He is approving people to blog. The superintendent himself tweets, and so you want to talk about leading by example. What a great example that is. So Carrie, thanks so much for sharing that. Brooke, any thoughts on this topic?
Well, I'd love to see, first off, that tweet from Carrie, because we've talked about it before, too, how blogging can really be a great tool to improve our own practice. So, why wouldn't we want this happening from our teachers around our district? And then the other thing, I don't have a ton of input on the worry of angering the district or a district not agreeing, but definitely, other teachers and other just readers of your blog might disagree with your message. And what I would say is that's okay. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how can we use that pushback to maybe rethink our perspective or restructure our message to see if we can reach, greater audiences. Having pushback and having people disagree can often be a very good thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Brooke. I think and Heidi, your cat back there, the Blogging Collaborative team, we all know Brooke's cat so well, so it's nice to see that. I forget which one that is, but decided to join us. One of the things that Brooke said that I think is key is that, quite frankly, and it goes back to someone else's question about like getting people to read it and such, like if people aren't disagreeing with it, I kind of know, or I'm a little disappointed in myself that I probably didn't write a very good report or a good blog, right? Like what I wrote wasn't really representing myself if at least someone doesn't agree with it. I mean, I like to think I have really good ideas, but I also am realistic that not everyone in the world would agree with everything I say. So I would hope that pushback happens. Before we go to our last one, I want a really good question here that Daniela Guardiola, that if you haven't learned, I don't say my students' names in class very often the first 2 weeks of school because I'm awful with that. So Daniela, I apologize if that's not even close to your name. But should your blog be linked to your school or more of a personal blog is her question. Chris, you're also a tech coach in your role, so how do you navigate that with people that you work with in your school?
We've actually talked a lot about this both at school and then also in that blog. Several people have asked about that and how would they, should it be a blog off of your school website? Should it be, what I've recommended to people is that you try to keep the two separate. Mainly, though, because we switch jobs, and so it's really convenient to have it kind of on Medium and then, or Blogger or whatever site you want to use, and just transfer it as you move districts, just having people link to it. I found that it's really easy to add a link to your website. If you look at the Nat Blog Collaborative's website, you'll see where it says Our Blog. You click on it, it links you to Medium's site, and it's not directly tied to, our specific site. And same thing with, my work. The people that we blog with typically keep them separate, but then you're welcome to choose to link to specific blogs off of your school site, or, keep it personal and link it from your Twitter or your personal website. So I would say, you want to keep the topics still professional, and you can always reference your school in your topics or even just on your blog site. But I think keeping it personal is also nice, so that if you do switch jobs, it's very easy to take with you, and it's not a new link that people have to learn.
Can I hop in there on this one real quick too?
Absolutely.
I think it's important, and like Kristen was saying too, keeping it separate, and then also knowing your audience though, because I found myself writing blogs on my personal blog that would really benefit my students' parents. Things about reading strategies or helpful at-home websites that students can get great use out of. So what I ended up doing is just linking a blog to my my profile on my school's website that was just for things like that. And I just would copy and paste them, stick them on that other blog, and that's really the only time I used that. But then I didn't link back to my other blog, and that's where I, talked about more than just great resources.
Great. We have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to go to our last takeaway that we've learned as blogging coaches, and that is I just don't know how to start. All right, so you've battled through all of these past things, right? You realize you have something to say. You realize you can be a writer. You've found the time. You've moved past the fact that you're not worried if people disagree with what you say. And in fact, you're embracing the fact that you want them to disagree, but what the heck do I do now? And that's something that we really work with at the Blogging Collaborative. That's been, I think, our biggest thing we've helped with. So I'm going to turn over to Lisa now to kind of talk a little bit about how the National Blogging Collaborative in and of itself as an organization can help you get started with your writing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would say first that we can help every type of blogger, from the beginner blogger to the expert blogger, and we can help through the entire to publishing. Specifically where, what do I do next? I really think that's the easiest part. The first thing you have to do is contact NBC. The second thing you have to do is write. You just start. It's one of those things that you just jump into. And as blogging coaches, what we'd like to do is help the writer find the platform, find the medium that's best for them. Whether it is a WordPress site, or whether it is a Google site, or whether it is a Medium, we talk a little bit about their needs and focus on those things. So whether it be in the writing process or whether it be in the publishing, it's mostly about what fits you best, what fits your personality, your style, will work to set you up with what works best for you.
Lisa, we're having you drop in and out here, so I'm going to kind of take over and finish up if that's all right. You froze a couple of times there for a pretty big stretch of time. So yeah, I think the key that we always want to stress at the National Blogging Collaborative, and I'll just kind of end it like this, is when it's all said and done, writing has to be fun. And if it's not fun, we as your coaches, or if you're not using us, you as the writer, you're doing something wrong. Because if you're dedicating some time to exploring your thoughts, reflecting upon your day, your students, and all those sorts of things, it's a blast. So we encourage you to write, whether it's with us, on your own. Commit yourself to being a writer. I'll leave you with our last, our theme. If you write, you're a writer, and that's really what matters. So thank you guys. Carolyn, I'll turn it over to you to finish this up. Caroline, you're still on mute.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Brooke, Chris, Kristen, and Lisa. That was a very inspirational ending to a wonderful presentation. And I know, just like many of our audience members, I will want to start blogging with you very soon. All right, just before we wrap up and before we say bye to our presenters, I just want to say, audience members, please stay tuned for session number 4. Okay, we've got lots of great workshops coming up. Let me just show you what we have coming up in session number 4. So session number 4, we have workshop number 10, presented by Mary Capellini, Emily D. Lido, who are talking about celebrating and supporting English language learners within our communities. We also have another workshop, workshop number 11, presented by Marissa Moss and Joellen McCarthy. We're going to be talking about wonderful investigations with mentor authors and mentor texts. So I really do hope that you can join us for those. Once again, thanks to our wonderful presenters today. Hope you guys start blogging soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.